Keep your seat, eat your lunch. I don't want to interrupt that very nutritious lunch there. Fuel for the.
Your attention, please. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker comes to us from New Jersey. However, he has spent 4 years living in the Carolinas. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Hanover College, his master's degree from Western Carolina University, and is a PhD student at Drew University. His primary research interest is the American Revolution in the Southern Colonies, and he's currently in the process of finishing a book about the Battle of Ramsar's Mill. Ben teaches history at Bloomfield College and is staff historian for the South Carolina 250th Commission, served as senior editor, along with Rick Wise of the Francis Marion Papers. He is also a peer reviewer for Southern Campaigns of the American Revolution. He has delivered numerous lectures on the Revolution and has appeared on several podcasts. So here to talk more about Volume 2 of the Francis Marion Papers is Ben Rubin.
So, the title of my talk in the program is The Coming of Volume 2 of the Marion Papers. But as you can see, it is here. So that is the exciting news that I have to share for you guys. First of all, Volume 2 of the Francis Marion Papers is out. Now, if you checked this morning, that was not true. I was sitting here in this very room around 12 o'clock, 12:30, frantically hitting refresh, and it's there. So when you all leave here today, go back to your hotel rooms, please check this out because it is free and available to everyone through the SC250 website. So we are very, very excited for that. I also have another announcement, piece of news, but I'm going to hold off on that for a minute. So, if you haven't been following along, we released Volume 1 of the Francis Marion Papers in February, last February. Volume 3 is slated to release this coming February of 2026, and that will be the whole set. So at that point, we will have given you everything we had. So the Marion Papers, as we divided them, is set up in 3 volumes. The first one covers Marion's entire life up to 1780. So our earliest letter goes back to 1759. It follows his life all the way up through 1780, through the fall of Charleston, through his campaigns in the fall of 1780. And then this volume, Volume 2, is just the year 1781. So our first volume, 1759 to 1780. Our second volume, just the year 1781. And then Volume 3 will be everything after 1781 until his death. So, as you might imagine, 1781 turns out to be a pretty important year in Marion's life. Accounts for fully 1/3 of the documents that we have. And of course, this is when he is at his most active. And so, really, out of the entire collection of letters that's here, 1781 is our most complete picture. So, if you're looking for the piece of the story where you can really follow along day by day, this is it, right? This is, Marion is in the field throughout the entire year. Many of the most important engagements and campaigns that he's involved in. And of course, if you're really interested in the minutiae of disagreements over rank and requisitioning supplies and letters about prisoner exchange back and forth, we have mountains of them in 1781. Lots of really, really interesting stories there. As with Volume 1, this is full of additional information. So we are, we have glossary, chronology, we have biographies of the major characters that are all linked. So when we bring somebody up, you can click those links and it'll take you to a biography of that person. Those are also linked back to the ones that were included in Volume 1. We also have little chronological sidebars that cover not just what's going on in Marion's life, but throughout the Southern Campaign and throughout the entire war even. We're tying to events that are happening in other parts of the 13 colonies. Now, as with our last publication, this is not meant to be the final version of this document. And Charles Baxley, who was in many ways the impetus behind this project, we'll talk more about him in a minute. It was very important to him that this be born digital, that we initially release it as a digital product. Now there will eventually be hard copy versions of this as well, but there's a couple reasons for the digital publication. One is that it's available to everyone. And so you don't need to own this book, you don't need to travel to a library. This research is available for absolutely everyone. If you can log on to your computer and head to southcarolina250.com, you have the entire thing at your fingertips. The second reason that this was born digitally is, and this turned out to be very prescient, we published Volume 1, and within a month, we got an email from someone saying, hey, I have a letter that you didn't know about. And so we had to go back. And so our goal here is that as new pieces of the puzzle emerge, or as people maybe catch errors that we made, or as the research and the historical context changes, we can go back and actually correct those things in real time. And so, with that in mind, I'm also here to announce not just that Volume 2 has dropped today, but that in a month we will be making our first major update to Volume 1, which has some corrections, as I said, at least one new letter, and also some additional explanatory material, a bunch of new maps, and so this is a living, breathing document. There's work continuing to happen. So we are very excited to announce both of those things, both Volume 2 and the update to Volume 1. I do want to acknowledge a few of the other people who have put in work to making this happen, some of whom are in this room and some of whom sadly are not. But first of all, I want to acknowledge Dave Nealon, who is here. I'm the one up here talking, but this project is more Dave Nealon's than it is anyone else's. He did the actual work over, 2 decades, Dave?
Close enough.
Yeah, of actually traveling around the country and gathering these letters. transcribing them. He also took the first stab at most of the additional supplemental material that ended up in the papers. And so, you know, Dave really kind of handed us the ball on the 10-yard line. And we are tremendously thankful to Dave for giving us this piece of research. Also, Rick Wise is here, who was my co-editor on the project. Very honored to have worked with Rick, and there are absolutely pieces of this that I could not have done without him, that his expertise filled in important gaps in mine, and you know, very, very honored to have worked with Rick. And then I want to acknowledge a couple people who aren't here. First of all, Charles Baxley, who both of these volumes are dedicated to, and the third one will be as well. Charles is the reason that this piece exists, in addition to obviously Dave doing the work. But this was very important to him that this happened. He's the reason I'm involved in this project. Charles was more than a mentor to me, and more than a mentor, I think, to a lot of people in this room. It's hard to imagine there's anyone in this room who's not familiar with Charles Baxley and his work. If you are, you really missed out. But we miss him dearly. Charles unfortunately passed away about a year and a half ago. And you know, again, this project would not have happened without him. The same is true for Doug Bostic, who was also part of the organizational team here, and I know is particularly important to Rick and served as a mentor in his life. And then Dave also wanted to make sure that I not forget Jack Parker, who we also lost earlier this year, and who was a major sounding board for Dave during the process of organizing these papers. So lots of you know, thanks and acknowledgments to go around to the people who put this ball in motion, and in many cases didn't see it all the way to the finish line. We are deeply indebted to them, and that we hope that you will be able to use this resource to carry their work forward. And with that, I will open it up for questions. Yeah, JD.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
The other benefit of the digital version is it is fully searchable.
That's true. Yes.
That saves a lot of time, folks. You can search it on any topic.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Your work has been a huge influence on that as well, the decision to go digital. I use your site almost every day. So, yeah, that is another important reason why this is born digital, and we hope that you'll all use it that way. Yes?
Just two comments. One is, anybody's interested, I downloaded and printed out volume 1. If anyone here wants to take a kind of quick look, see what it looks like, do that.
It's not on here.
Two.
Oh, it helps if you turn that on. So what I said before is I downloaded and printed out volume 1, if anyone wants to take a quick look at it. It's very well done. It's very heavily footnoted. It's an excellent work, not just on Francis Marion, but on the war in general in the South, but it's also reflective of all the difficulties the commanders had in the North, difficulties with rank, difficulties getting with money, difficulties with getting supplies. All of that is reflected in these letters, and so I would highly recommend it for that reason. And I just want to commend everybody who worked on it. It's just a tremendous resource, and I want to thank you all.
And I will especially thank on behalf of everyone involved. Yeah.
Ben, hi, I'm Paul Wood from Camden. I look forward to meeting you in person. With all of this work that...
Paul, Ben, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Jay. You're so good. All right. Certainly you've come across a lot of subjects that are worth deep exploration, and these papers are going to help. Would you lift up 2 or 3 of those subjects that are worth some of us going into? Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the stories that I've actually used in my outside research that is coming about in this volume is the discussion over prisoner exchanges, which gets really, really complicated and really down in the weeds. Specifically, the question about Captain Pastel, who was sent to the British under a flag of truce, and the British kept him as a parole violator. And then you have this whole series of letters back and forth between Marion, his opponents, Watson, Saunders, Balfour, all these British officers arguing about what the rules of war actually say about the treatment of these guys and what his political status is, right? Because the Americans were arguing he was under a flag of truce. It's inappropriate to apprehend him. He was under protection. The British argued back that he was a parole violator and therefore not entitled to protection under those laws. And I mean, they're really litigating this thing in letters back and forth between the different parties. And so if you're going through these letters looking for accounts of battles, there are a few of those, but there's really a lot more to the waging of war. And I think this really gives you a window into what the kind of day-to-day struggle was like. And then also the questions about rank, which I kind of alluded to, and actually Dave's done a bunch of work on this one. But the disagreement between O'Ree and Mayhem, I believe it begins towards the end of this volume in 81, but it also then carries into 82, where O'Ree and Mayhem are basically arguing over whose commission supersedes the other, right? Who is in command? And it has to do with continental versus militia versus state commissions. It has to do with the date of those commissions. It has to do with where those commissions originate, whether they're coming from the Continental Authority or from the state of South Carolina, and how those overlap. And so, we tend not to focus on these kinds of issues in the military in the 18th century. We kind of imagine this kind of sanitized 18th century warfare that's all about pageantry and battles and combat. But all of these other kinds of details that militaries have always had to deal with, up to and including today, the bureaucracy of actually running an army in the field really comes forward in the letters. Yeah, Dave.
There's a really one that puts another side of Francis Marion. Are we on?
You're good.
I think this is 17, maybe January. Sorry about that. I believe it's January 1780. I guess it's Francis who's sitting in down southern Georgia, on the southern state, and Marion has lightened up, believe it or not. This is probably only one instance that I ever recall Francis Marion having anything other than stern nature. And this is the times when he reveals that he has a mustache.
Right. Yeah, that's in volume 1.
Apparently, after Savannah, the Americans got mixed up with the French, and I guess a lot of the Americans wound up start growing their mustachios.
Yeah.
I never knew what mustachios were. I knew what mustachios, not mustachios. And if you go in the search into that, and you'll see, to me, it's just an enjoyable side where Marion writes to Harleston, I think it is, too.
Yeah.
That it's something, a paraphrase this, that Marion will say, you will interesting to see that I have a fine pair of mustachios.
And if you have not one, you will be most singular.
Yeah.
Which, I love that phrasing as well.
And hopefully, I mentioned this to Karen McNatt, and this is a few years ago, but Karen had made a writing, I guess a drawing of Marion, and then after I had seen that, I think I suggested maybe she should make him with mustachio. And Karen did make one with a mustachio with Marion, and I'm not sure if it's ever get into the volumes of volume 1, 2, or 3, but it is, to me, it's very, very curious to see Marion being portrayed with a mustachio.
Yeah, we don't normally think of facial hair as something that existed in the Revolution. But as you mentioned, yeah, so that particular letter, which is actually in volume 1, it comes right after they had served with the French in Savannah. And so evidently all of these American officers became enamored of facial hair. And Harleston had been on leave at the time, and so he wasn't part of the Savannah expedition. And so Marion's telling him as he's returning to camp that if he doesn't grow a mustache before he gets back, he's going to look very strange because everyone in the regiment is wearing them now.
Is there any evidence anywhere in the papers that Francis Marion killed anybody in action?
Personally killed anyone?
Because it's notoriously left out. You know, you would think a general like that would personally hurt some people.
I don't want to say categorically no, but I can't think of an instance. Rick, you? No, I don't think so.
I mean, in a roundabout way, after he burned the Cherokee gowns, you know, in the field.
Yeah, although we don't know a whole lot about what his direct involvement with that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Karen.
My name is Karen McNutt. I've done a lot of research on Marion and presented here a number of times. Marion was the officer. He did not get engaged in hand-to-hand combat, so I would be inclined to say no. But that's not to say that he wouldn't if he had to do so.
Yeah.
He certainly ordered men to open fire, which would result in death to the enemy. So there was no hesitancy there. But if you're the guy in command, then you got to watch what everybody else is doing. You can't, you can't be engaging in the fighting yourself, except for if everybody gets through and all of a sudden, you're on the receiving end of a bayonet. You do what you got to do to survive. So my thought would be probably not. Although there are accounts of him firing at people. There's an account, if I might digress for a minute, where he was almost captured. He was on his horse and he was in the field all by himself. And he was surrounded by loyalists who chased him. He went from one field to another. And finally, he got into a field that had a descent down to a drainage ditch and a 7-foot fence over the ditch. Now, you marsh tacky people keep track of this. And the loyalists chasing Marion were sure he would not be able to get his horse over that fence and ditch. It was a 7-foot fence. And he was riding Ball, which was probably not a marsh tacky, probably a good-blooded horse. And the horse cleared the fence. And the Tories couldn't believe that had happened. And when the horse cleared the fence, Marion turned around, took both his pistols, discharged them one at a time at the loyalists. Didn't hit anything. But then, since nobody could do any damage to the other, he was a good day and trotted off into the woods.
That's the story.
Yeah, allegedly. It's a good story. Yeah. You wanna? Yeah. So Rick. Oh, Rick.
Okay.
And then I think
Couple
we gotta
things.
finish up.
Okay. No evidence that Ben or I saw or Dave that Marion killed anybody. he was my observation as a retired Army officer, he was the penultimate commander. Okay, once you get engaged in the fight yourself, you lose focus on the bigger picture. So Marion had the bigger picture in mind. And also, as we look at volume 2, and I've done a presentation here before about this, as you get into the rounds campaign, February, early March of 1781, one of the things you're going to discover is a lot of the things that former or previous biographers and historians who did not have the Marion letters, they talked about Marion not wanting to serve under Sumter, and he drug his feet, and he did all these things so he would not have to do that, and that is absolutely untrue. When you see the letters, you will find that Marion did everything he could to join up with Sumter, and sometimes there's a thing called the fog of war comes in, and they passed each other in the night. Okay, so I think you'll find that enlightening. You'll also find that in the midst of trying to be an outstanding partisan commander with a lack of resources and not much support coming from anywhere, the governor would send him letters telling him that, hey, how about send us a list of folks you think need to be magistrates? Why don't you take a look at these folks and think who could be a sheriff and that sort of thing. And as you can imagine, all the things you have going on, and now the political head of everything starts to rise up. So, you know, you're going to find a lot of intriguing things here. And, you know, again, the hero in this whole effort is Dave Nealon. And, you know, Ben and I had the honor of Charles Baxley and Doug Bostic wanting us to work on this. And so it's been our honor to bring this to you. But thanks mostly to David.
Amen.
Huzzah! We're going to take 5 minutes break. If you need water or anything to drink or any snacks, get